続いて、アンリアルの配信します。こんにちは。昨日に続いてエコーで流れちゃうんですけど、アンリアルの配信します。こんにちは。昨日に続いてエコーで流れちゃうんですけど、アンリアルの配信します。これが昨日に続いてエコーで流れちゃうんですけど、アンリアルの配信します。
Cool. All right. So before we start, can I just ask, show of hands, wasn't at the epic keynote earlier today? Cool. Okay, good. Quite a lot of you. So we did a reveal of the scene, which we're going to run again, which is, if you look to the stage left, okay, good. Quite a lot. Right. So that's Melina. She's our actress for Hellblade, the scene, and she's going to be performing a scene from our game live. So we'll kick off with that, please. Right? That's Melina. She's our actress for Hellblade, the scene, and she's going to be performing a scene from our game live. So we'll kick off with that, please.
これが昨日の忍者セオリーさんの、実際の技術的な紹介、忍者セオリーさんの
You can't put it into words. The moment when you look into the eyes of the one who is supposed to reassure you, you can't put it into words. Make you feel safe. It only takes an instant. You look into the eyes. Fear swallows you before you have a chance to make sense of it. Make you feel safe. And darkness becomes a part of who you are. Fear swallows you before you have a chance to make sense of it. And darkness becomes a part of who you are. Her world changed that day when the Northmen took him from her. Senua knows that there is no going back to how things were. Her world, there is nothing to go back to at all.
Their gods consumed your mind. They will use this power to destroy you.
Stop me.
Whatever's left of him, they will never let him go.
I'm not gonna let him rot here.
Whoever was not in here,
Leave me alone.
you will die here. And all your suffering will be for nothing.
Shut up! I'm not gonna let him rot here.
Whoever was not in here,
Leave me alone.
you will die here. And all your suffering will be for nothing.
Shut up! I'm not gonna let him rot here.
Whoever was not in here,
Leave me alone.
you will die here. And all your suffering will be for nothing.
Shut up!
音が流れちゃってるから
You will die here. And all your suffering will be for nothing.
音が流れちゃってる
Cool. So a warm hand for Melina. As far as we know, this is also a warm hand for Melina. Character of such fidelity has been formed directly from within the game. And it's pretty exciting tech. Just to set up this scene, such fidelity it can be done entirely virtually. So we have full control over the camera, lighting, the effects. So if you want to switch on fire, say, just to set up this scene, you can do so. And then you can tune the performance in real time without a green screen inside. And it's a different way of working, but it means that you don't need a big old studio like a Warner Brothers studio, Universal studio. You can see your point about future work. Everything is done entirely virtually. It's a different way of working, but it means. And if you weren't here at the earlier keynote, Melina actually did a little Warner Brothers studio, Universal studio, a little irrelevant song, really irreverent song. Do you mind doing it again? And if you weren't here at the earlier keynote, we were talking about how you could use this tech for things like animated films in particular. So,
まあ若きが再建できてる
doing it again? You were talking about how you could use this tech for things like animated films in particular. learn the lines for it. But it's pretty unreal, isn't it? Like just standing there looking at a whole digital human and being able to chat to her. I mean, how does it differ for you in terms of how you, compared to how you really unreal, isn't it?
Well, for me, it's great because I can see the scene and then I can just be performing.
もうマーカーとかそういうのそれなのつけてないっぽいですけど、赤外線の話してる何かつけてるのかもしれない。マーカーとかそういうの書いてないでつけてるぐらいかな。で、違うもうそんなに書いてるのかもしれない。
All right, so in this talk we're going to, I mean this was created as a partnership between ourselves. My name's Tamim, by the way, from Ninja Theory, creative director of Ninja Theory. All right, so on this, the guys at Three Lateral, Cubic Motion, and of course this Wizards package put this together. So this talk is ourselves. My name's Tamim, the context of how we put that together. So guys, Three Lateral. So we don't need you now, Melina, so thank you very much for doing that for us. So this talk is about context of how we put that together. And let's switch to the slides. So I wanted to just give a little context behind the game and what this kind of stuff means for us. We're Ninja Theory. We've been around for 15 years or so, based in Cambridge, UK, and we've always been character focused. And the first example of us using performance capture was, in fact, possibly the first use of performance capture in a game, which was on Heavenly Sword, which we did out in partnership with Weta. So it was really exciting to show this again, kind of like another step forward. So we're not a big team. We're about 16 people, and we see ourselves as in a space that isn't indie and it isn't AAA. It's a space that we call independent AAA. And we believe that a lot of developers are finding this space because of things such as digital distribution. So a large part of this project was trying to work out ways of bringing our AAA production heritage into an indie type ethos. And at the time it felt like a daunting task, but the creative freedom we get from independence has allowed us to really push art and technology further than we ever imagined. And we did run some numbers to see what we could do with what kind of budget we would need. And what we came up with is about 15 or 16 people for about 2 years is where we think the sweet spot is for digital distribution, where you can break even and then start to make some royalties. And a lot of this has been possible because of technologies like Unreal Engine 4, whose tools are focused on productivity and small teams. But it's also made possible because of specialist technology and middleware technology that are maturing, like Three Laterals and Cubic Motions, who you've seen on display here, who I feel are the real stars of the show in this scene. So the original concept behind Cinema was to focus, rather than do what AAA games do and focus on lots of areas, kind of tick all those marketing boxes, is to focus really on just a few very focused areas. And one of them is to focus on Senua herself, one character, and try and make her as believable as possible.
真心を大切にした成駒のお食事、四季折々の真心を大切にした成駒のお食事、四季折々の真心を大切にした成駒のお食事、四季折々の真心を大切にした成駒のお食事、四季折々の真心を大切にした成駒のお食事、四季折々の真心を大切にした
And we want to make it believable because we are tackling some difficult themes in the game. So the project is backed by Wellcome Trust. We've been consulting for a year and a half with Paul Fletcher, Professor of Health Neuroscience and Psychiatrist. And we're doing this because the game, Senua is a Celtic warrior. She's going into the Viking heartland, and she's struggling with trauma and severe psychosis. So we wanted to represent that well. We wanted to represent the physical, the mental, the emotional trials of her journey. And to do this, we were collaborating quite deeply with people with lived experience of voice, hearing, and visions. So they've been looking at the game and feeding back their experiences into the game. So it's not a psychosis simulator, if you will. It's a story of a person, Senua, who has her own character, dreams, and hopes. But we feel like by collaborating with this wide-ranging group, we've managed to represent at least her experience truthfully. Right. So to get this tech working, I mean, performance capture traditionally is seen as something that only AAA teams can make use of. And we can't afford to go out to Weta or Giant Studios in LA to shoot the scenes of this. So we did a lot of improvising, and we built our own performance capture studio in our main meeting room. And really the quality we're getting from this is as good as we have done from Heavenly Sword 10 years ago, if not better. So it's pretty attainable tech these days, and we've done dev diaries online, which you can look up to see kind of more info on how we've achieved this. So the scene you just saw, we initially blocked out within our own studio. Here, though, we're using an X-Sense bodysuit that's driving an echinema simulation of the body. So there's multiple solutions for performance capture. So our goal really was to capture the essence of a person, and we found that we were very lucky to kind of meet Vladimir from Three Lateral, who invited us to Serbia, and he just developed this amazing face scanning technology where over 100 expressions were captured. And anyway, we created a digital double of Melina, and Cubic Motion helped drive this facial solving, both offline and real time, that you see here. So pretty amazing stuff. Right, so I should probably explain that dog. Yeah, so we're taking a different approach this time to how we construct the whole body. We use full body scanning, we scan materials. A lot of it's done by hand still, by artists, but a lot of it is referencing real-world materials, using reference photos under precise lighting setups so that we can capture the skin, and Epic has been doing a huge amount of work in getting more realistic skin shaders and so forth, and hair shaders working. So I see us more as amalgamating a lot of cool tech and using that to create our story. So with that, I'd like to pass you over first to Steve from Cubic Motion to explain his facial solving technology. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to me. Okay, so as Timmy mentioned, so we're specialists in facial animation, so we go for about... Right. Rise, The Order, and Until Dawn. Generally, we're involved in creating high quality, high volume, facial animation for video games and movies. We were approached by Ninja Theory to get involved in the project probably about 9 months ago, I think. And it was a great opportunity from our point of view to really get involved in something that's particularly high quality. Okay. Anybody here? The mic is not working. Is there an alternative?
Okay. Hey. Ninja Theory approached us about 9 months ago to contribute to Hellblade, which was a great opportunity because from an artistic point of view, from their vision, it's a really exciting project to get involved in, and there's a lot of scope for really pushing the quality boundaries and to actually produce something that looks really great. So the main, I suppose, requirements and the goals of this project were that we were looking for a really intense emotional performance. There's not a lot of talking between characters or kind of just general dialogue or action. It's going to be intense, it's emotional, and it's about her mental state and how she expresses it. So in order to do that, we just tried to put together the most high quality pipeline we could do to try and realise that character. Obviously in conjunction with our other partners, so Vladimir will talk to you about the rig shortly. So if we can fire the video. So this is, again, you've seen a bit of this here, but this shows you the capture setup, which is, again, at Ninja Theory's office. So we're using a stereo head-mounted camera produced by Technoprops, so pretty high-quality kit, and very, very good in terms of stability and reliability. So we really are getting good data through to actually drive the performance. And I should say this is the offline before we move to the live. So again, we're capturing 2 views throughout, and that gives us great data to be able to solve to the actual character. This. Trying to roll this one. So what we end up with the stereo capture is actually quite powerful. So what you're seeing here is an actual reconstruction of the points on Melina's face as she's performing. So we film in two views of the camera. We calibrate that setup, reconstruct in 3D, and that gives us actual proper 3D data to work with, which is great from our point of view. We don't always tend to get this kind of high quality information, so we're able to use the depth information that's in there, so things like the jaw moving forward and back, the lips pushing forward, all those kind of things that are really hard to kind of even see from a single point of view. We've got great data to use. So, and what you can see here on the left-hand side, you can see the reconstruction. On the right-hand side, it's reprojected back down, so it shows that we're getting a pretty decent result. So this allows us then to, there's a few things we can then do on the stereo side to help us out in terms of quality. So here, you may not be able to see it here, but there's actually a point which represents the lower teeth reconstruction there, which is we're actually using to dynamically drive the jaw. So optimizing the jaw control. So we're really getting good information about the depth of the jaw that is really hard to get in performance-driven animation, because it's one of the things that you struggle to even see, let alone actually measure and drive. So it's given us, again, a higher fidelity, and particularly a lot of the performance, which is intense and quite stressed out at the time, and quite anguished, the teeth and the way the teeth move and the way the jaw is tensed up is quite important in how how Senio actually behaves. And similarly with the eyes, we have a similar. We can reconstruct the position of the eyes in 3D, and although it seems quite simple, animating the eyes, the eye direction, actually, you do find that you lose fidelity sometimes. So here we actually able to use the 3D reconstructed point and actually optimize the direction on the rig control so that it's pointing in the right direction to hit the date. So again, it's all helping us to produce as good a result as we can, and to really try and bring the character to life in a believable way. So I won't go into this in much depth, but essentially we then solve from the stereo data for all the other controls, and that produces an animation. And we have a team of very skilled animators who use our tools and produce that animation for the final game. So that's all well and good. So that's in progress and will hopefully be available soon for everybody to actually see them for themselves. But probably about a couple of months ago, Epic actually came to us and said, how about trying to do this in real time? So instead of saying, no, let's not do that, we stupidly said yes. So then we actually have a real challenge. So all of the stuff that we're doing offline, so the stereo data, being able to refine the result, being able to kind of review, put in scene and tweak and do whatever we need to do is out of the window. We've got to do it in real time. We get 16 milliseconds per frame to process it. We can't fix it after the event, and we're streaming straight into Unreal. So actually, can you fire that video as well? So this is the kind of thing we need to produce. So you can see that's just a video from Hellblade, just to render out of Maya. You can see the control. So Vladimir will talk in more depth about the rig, but we're working with a fax-based rig. So it's muscle-based. We've got smiles, funnels, puckers, stretches, those kind of things. So it's quite a complicated solve. So we're essentially trying to drive those controls in real time, direct from the headset Melina is wearing, without any fancy stereo stuff to work with. So if you can fire that video. So this shows you the data we are working with, as you can see from over there. So we've only got one camera. Because we've got such a lot of constraints in terms of how we need to operate, we've used a bit of facial makeup, so we've coloured the lips different colours. Again, that's just to make our life easier, allow things to run in real time, and to make things more robust, because we can't have the lip tracking falling off. That's okay offline because you just fix it on the frames that it might have fallen off. In real time, it will look terrible. So we have to try and make sure we're ultra robust and we can process it all so quickly. Similarly with the lighting, so Melina has suffered some very, very high levels of lighting for far too long. That's in there, but again, just to make sure that when she turns around, we're not getting horrible shadowing in a live environment. So we're doing a few things just to make the task easier, but ultimately we've had to work pretty hard to make a real-time tracker that's robust, runs fast enough, and we can plug in and will be guaranteed to work, hopefully. So once we've got that live tracker up and running, then we can build a live solver. So again, a similar set of problems applies, and we've got to do it very quickly. We can't edit it. It's going to be streaming straight into Unreal. So again, we've put a lot of work in a pretty short space of time to try and really push what we can learn from the 2D data that's coming off the live tracker and drive the character as much as we can. And we've done that by, we've actually had the advantage of we've probably got about 10 minutes of animated Hellblade footage that we've actually been using as training data. So we already know how Melina moves. We've got data for her. We've got kind of animated performances on her rig. And what we can do is we can do what we've done in this video here, which is we can project that back down to the 2D, and that will simulate how her face moves when she's wearing the head cam. So the idea being, we then learn that solver, plug the live tracking feed in, and then she will hopefully move in a believable and realistic way. So I think that's pretty much where we are, and so we plug that into the live system, and that's what you see on screen when Melina's performing. We're going to cut to the live system. Okay, here we go. So Melina, there we go. So obviously some of this is, so what we're doing is we, you know, in our testing phases, we're just trying to make sure that things are working. So, you know, we just have to make sure that she can blink, she can squeeze her eyes, she can raise her eyebrows, lower her eyebrows, look angry, she can sneer, she can cheer, she can wah, she can but. So, these are, so, you know, this is just to make sure that things are working nicely, and you know, again, this is quite a difficult task. We need to get this working, but we also need to be able to show some emotion. So if you really push it, now if you can really just be angry, just really kind of sneer. So, which you probably are after the amount of time you've been rehearsing this piece. So I think that pretty much brings me to the end of our piece. So I'd certainly like to thank particularly Mel for the effort she's put in over the last 6 weeks. And I can say that light is very bright and that camera is not very comfortable, and she's been doing it for a very long time, and that is the end of her performance for the week. So thank you very much, Mel. Cool. And I'd just like to hand over to Vladimir from Trilactor, who's going to talk about creating the actual character and the digital asset.
Thanks, Steve. Oh, mine is working.
For you.
Okay, so let's just switch to the next one. My name is Vladimir Mastilovic. I come from Trilateral Studio. We were tasked to scan Melina and turn her into Senua, so we were building the digital double, the geometry, the textures, and the face rig. We also have contributed to this demo with a piece of technology, which is actually going to be the highlight of my short presentation. I've done some presentations on the whole rigging and scanning process. It became maybe even a standard over the past couple of years, and I won't be dedicating much time to go in all details because we don't have enough time, but I'll talk about what's actually most important in this presentation. Also wanted to mention that this project was very special to us because this is exactly what we like to do, and it was a great team effort. One of those situations that happened only a couple of times in a long time, where multiple teams meet and things just happen. That's nice. You don't have to negotiate anything; it just happens, and it seems natural. So that was great. Just wanted to mention what we do. So we specialize in characters. So we do 3D and 4D scanning, data processing. We do provide technology and pipeline solutions, and it's all around characters. That's what interests us. So we do also character design, modeling and rigging, and complete character creation services, including some in-engine technologies like rig logic, and this is going to be the highlight of this presentation, for my part at least. And we do also some character customization and population generation systems, which will come later, maybe for next GDC. But it's certainly going to be interesting because maybe I can touch on that a little bit later. Okay, so let's see the next slide. Okay, so I'm not going to show the scanning process. We used our scanner, which has 90 cameras and some machine vision cameras to track certain things and collect references. But it's on this project, it was fairly straightforward photogrammetric system. We used Agisoft to reconstruct 90 camera angles. We also had some very nice LED lighting system that we built. But I think for this project, data processing itself was actually much more interesting because it's using our pipeline for tracking features in textures. So as you can see, I've just made 2 screenshots of 2 facial expressions, and it's showing vectors where we see motion in the textures. So this texture analysis allowed us to create very precisely tracked correspondence between individual scans, which then resulted as very high resolution, very precise blend shapes. And the thing doesn't stop there, because we can do even further iteration of this correspondence process so that we can extract fine detail, which is really poor level detail, from which we can learn about the wrinkles, and we can also learn about the blood flow. Again, due to limited time, I can't show all the details, but judging from those 2 screenshots, you can see the level of precision we can currently operate. Maybe on the screen grab where she frowns, you can see that the tone of the skin is different, and that we see some yellow parts where blood has left the skin due to pressure, and some red parts where it kind of collected based on this pressure. So we take a subset of scans. We call them primary expressions. I guess other people call them too. And we kind of take these primary wrinkles and we collect them into wrinkle maps, and they'll work all nice because they're corresponded. So we see the change on the pore level, how they stretch and how they change color. And on this project in particular, we had this great face paint, which Ninja Theory came up with, and it was specifically designed to crackle. So that was very interesting. The first time we tried our technology on something like this, so you can actually see the chips of the paint kind of being created based on the pressure and the direction of the wrinkles. So after we get the blend shapes from the process based on texture analysis, we do get a set, all depending on the project. Sometimes we get 10, 15, sometimes 40, sometimes about 100, but we get a certain set of blend shapes. And these blend shapes are all FACS-based. And I'm not going to go in depth on FACS, but suffice to say that FACS is a recognized standard, which basically says that facial expressions on humans are universal. So if we 3D scan the expression of a certain muscle, then we can build some biomechanical model of how this face moves in other expressions that we can't scan. So we can't obviously scan all of them, we scan some of them. And people are not really used to activating a single muscle individually, so there's bound to be some errors. And so limited number and errors means that you have to go through a manual pass and correct and calibrate some of these things, and also build some of the secondary blend shapes manually. This can easily become a very complicated thing to do, because you have to visualize things contextually, and you have to follow each vertex and what it does, when it's triggered in this combination or in the other. So in order to help with this complexity, we've built this visualizing system in Maya, which is node-based and which allows us to select individual facial expressions, and it tells us the dependencies in the rig. I've actually recorded a short video, which we can play now, which shows some of this process. So as I select those nodes, it tells us the dependencies, and we can browse through this contextual network and check how how blend shapes behave, not only individually, but also in combination with other blend shapes, which basically means how they will behave in the animation. So this consistency in motion is very important, and we take a lot of effort to have that correct. And here I show just that we can work on the blend shape, and we have a real-time assembled version of the rig. So we can, as we change the individual blend shapes, we can see how they're affecting everything else. Visually, maybe this is not the best example, but I'm just trying to keep everything short, because I can easily fill 60 minutes with this. Once we have built all the blend shapes, the core component of all of our rigs is a solver, which we call rig logic, and we're approaching that. And basically, rig logic is a solver which interprets this user interface, which we have standardized across all of our projects. We can build different user interfaces, but we like this one. It can be on the face. It's just animation preference. But anyway, rig logic is basically taking this standard user interface and it's mapping it to a group of rig elements, which can be anything. It can be joints or blend shapes, it can be wrinkle maps, diffuse, specular, normal, or it can be some data sets which are not yet standard. So we've made this level of abstraction so that we remain flexible in the future when new data types arrive. So this rig logic is also, I'm kind of connecting on the facts and human facial expression being universal. We're trying to abstract these things with rig logic and basically parameterize a face. Which means that if this person blinks, then if we map that animation on some other face, the same animation curve should create a blink and nothing else. Which means that rig logic is ensuring that you can actually share animations between characters. And just a very short video demonstration of the rig in action. So we have here built a DirectX shader just to be able to preview the animated wrinkles and to see them in real time as a help for the animation. It's not pretending to be the final skin shader. So that's how the interaction with the rig looks like. We've tried to, I think we actually managed to build it so that it's fun to animate as a keyframe rig, but you can also build solvers, optical motion capture, or even better, video performance capture solvers, which Cubic Motion are experts at. That will map to these controls. So being universal is very important, I think. Even when we create animal rigs, we will base it on this interface. Maybe we won't have all the facial expressions, but the main ones like the smiling and the nose wrinkler and the eyebrows, that's all universal. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the rig logic. So we use Maya in our studio, and this is how it used to be. So we had some animation inputs, which could be coming from anywhere. Then they're talking to rig logic, which is then talking to rig elements, and it's telling them what to do. And that was all fine for some time, but when we started having massive data sets, then programming rig logic in Maya was becoming complicated. So then we figured, instead of trying to change Maya, because that would be impossible, really, we came up with this strategy, and that is to move out, eventually. It's not switching to the next. Yeah, to move it out of Maya and make it a standalone application. And this allowed us to be much quicker with the programming, and it started being evaluated really fast. So next step is then to move even, we can go to the next one. Okay. Yeah. Then we moved out the even rig elements to other applications, in this case Unreal Engine. So we can actually talk from Maya to rig logic outside of Maya, and then rig logic will talk to the engine. And in this case, on this demo, we have completely abandoned the host application, and the application that actually talked to rig logic was the application that Cubic Motion wrote that just talked to our rig logic server, and it just requested certain facts expressions to be solved, and then rig logic solved it and sent it to the engine. And this works really nice and really fast, and it basically going to create some sort of a standard that can be used for other things. For example, we can expand it, and we actually already have. So rig logic can become a cloud solution, and that means that rig logic can be very complicated to evaluate. Sometimes it's not, but in the future it definitely will be. And this basically means that we could stream solved animation to a mobile device that maybe would otherwise not be able to perform such calculations. And that becomes really interesting, because then imagine having a bunch of engines and bunch of applications, all with different faces, but using one single animation, which is very light data that can be streamed over network. And that's going to be something for the future, but definitely something that we're very excited about. And I just wanted to to show a video of Maya talking to the engine and telling Senua which facial expressions it needs to do. So this works. It's completely in sync between Maya and the engine, but it doesn't have to be Maya. It can be anything else. So I think even without everything else, this is very useful because we can see the character inside the engine with the shaders. And yeah, I will wrap up my part with this. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? The mic. Can you hear me now? I'm Brian Karras from Epic Games. I'm a graphics programmer there. I'm going to be talking about how we got this data running in Unreal and looking good there. First, I'll talk a bit about the animation features. Most of them already existed in Unreal for this demo, but we did add a few new features that were specific. First of which was streaming of live data, some of which has already been talked about from the 3 lateral node from rig logic into the engine. We also used the iKinema for the body motion. That would take a small number of bones coming from the mocap stream, turn that into the full body rig to drive that, as well as doing changing that from the proportions of the Mel, the actress, to the proportions of Senua, the character in engine. We found that the normals that were being generated by our morph target system before, it was previously doing blending of the normals for each shape, was not giving us quality results. We've instead added a new feature in the engine to recompute the normals and the tangents of the final resulting pose of all of those morph targets. That's happening on the GPU. It's pretty fast, but it gives you what you would have been seeing coming out of Maya and what you'd expect to see if you had sculpted that pose, that's sort of normals that you would have gotten. It gets a lot more of the expression out of the face than our previous solution. We used a new feature called Anim Dynamics that was originally developed for characters in Paragon. This is used for the ponytail hair of Senua. It's just a faster way of doing physics that doesn't need to go through the full world simulation from our physics system that we would have used in the past. It's just a much more efficient way to have different physical bits that hang off of a character. We added a new twist corrective node that was used for morph target correctives on the neck shape. It was getting really kind of like bendy looking before, and now we added in these new scanned corrective shapes that were based on the detected amount of twist that was happening from one bone to the next. Similarly, we added a new option to something that already existed before called the bone drive controller. Similar to the twist controller I just mentioned, this is calculating the amount of bend from one bone shape to another, and we use this to drive the folding of the creases in her dress. Having a live performance adds a lot of amount of error that needs to be compensated for that we wouldn't have typically had, because in this case we had a pre-canned camera but a live performance. where that performance ended up every time was slightly different, enough that it would be outside the framing that the camera had. As you can see in these shots here, she could be almost halfway off screen. You wouldn't be seeing what the intended performance was. So we wrote a smart camera system that would try to keep her face framed at all times to match what the original intention of the shot was. For the ending bit of the performance, this became to be so sensitive that we had a different solution that triggered just in these last moments. The framing was so tight and the depth of field was so exacting that we needed to have just her eyes and her nose to be in focus, where if it was just slightly a few inches off for the focal distance, that she would be out of focus. To do this, we locked the camera transform relative to the head bone, which did mean that there was a bit of kind of camera jostling movement as she moved around, but it meant that we could keep her in focus and framed properly. Next, I'll talk a bit about the look development and rendering features that we developed to get Senua to look like she does. I thought I would show, fortunately, nobody's here to press the video. Thank you. I just thought I would show what her performance looks like in engine with her clean face without the paint on it, just to see that there's a lot of little details that you see in just tiny little changes in what her eyes are doing, the wrinkles around her eyes that you can't necessarily see in the full piece as the camera is moving around. So first up, we focused on getting the skin to look right. A lot of the data that we got from 3Lateral from their scan process gave us a ton to work with. The textures that we had are really high resolution. The normals had a lot of detail in them. It was important for us to get the color to be correct and balanced properly to be the right intensity. And to do that, we matched that up to photo reference. What we did not have data for is specular reflectance and roughness data. For that, we took it off of measurements we found from literature as far as how different regions are as far as specularity across the face. Here's an example of comparing an EXR that was taken from a photo shoot to the reconstructed version of that face within the engine. We wanted to make sure that the color and specularity was all right, that the sizes of irises, pupils, all those types of things, we wanted to make sure that we've got a match. I'd suggest anybody else that is doing this, it's extremely important to have photo reference for anything that you're trying to achieve as far as photorealism. If you don't have what you're trying to shoot for as the real world example, there's no way that you're going to be able to hit it properly. To get the really small scale details with the face, we added a micro detail texture for tiling of the pore detail with the normal and roughness maps. We used a cavity map to darken down the recesses of the skin pores, and we fine-tuned the subsurface scattering curves to match our photo reference. Previously, with some of the characters that we worked on in Paragon, some of these details we had the technology there, we were just quite a bit off as far as what we were hitting based on what we could have found from reference. The subsurface scattering itself is a feature that's been in the engine for a while now. Recently with Paragon we made some optimizations where you need to be able to separate what the diffuse and the specular contribution are, because you don't want to be doing any scattering of the specular. You only want to be scattering what the diffuse lighting was. Previously, we had those separated into RGB, and then in the alpha channel, we stored the specular amount and could be able to separate them that way. For performance reasons, we ended up switching to this different approach, which subsamples the diffuse and specular. For most skin examples, we found this not to matter, but it's relevant to something I'll get to in a little bit. We really focused quite a bit on eyes for this demo because there's so much of her performance that comes through in the emotions just in her eyes, so much that humans focus on for eyes for a performance that it became kind of the most important thing for the look development. As far as geometry, there is a corneal bulge in the geometry. They aren't just eyeballs, aren't perfect spheres. We have a material that has controls for all sorts of different properties of the eye. Every one of them can be fine-tuned to try to match our photo reference. We calculate the refraction that happens as light rays pass through the cornea and hit the iris so that you can get, so that things don't kind of look like they're weirdly popping out of the eye, that it looks like there's multiple layers of material there. We have an eye shading model that was recently added to the engine. Ideally, we would have used the screen space subsurface scattering for the sclera, but because of what I was previously mentioning, that we subsample the specular and having really sharp reflections for the wetness layer and on the cornea of the eye are really kind of defining attributes of eyes. It would have lost quite a bit of detail if we would have been subsampling the specular calculations. So instead we used an energy-conserving wrapped Lambert to kind of fake the subsurface that was happening there. It works out pretty well. The caustics as light travels through the cornea and makes a caustic pattern on the iris are faked using a little bit of shader trick with having a concave normal and raising that lighting contribution to a power. Unfortunately, we don't have a normal map for the irises themselves due to limited G-buffer space, but unless you get really close with really extreme lighting directions, you mostly can't tell. We added a tear line, which is a separate piece of geometry that's coming on the bottom eyelid. This is a translucent surface. We use forward shading for this. Right now it's kind of an experimental feature within the engine, but it's available. Shadow maps aren't currently implemented on it, which became a problem. You'd see a lot of glowing on the inner corner of the eye when you'd get light coming from the side. Added screen space ray traced shadows as just a much easier to implement version of shadows than trying to get shadow maps to be hooked up properly. But it solved the problem well enough. The eye shell, which is an extra shell of geometry that goes between the two eyelids and over the eyeball, that sits in place as the eye looks from one direction to the next. That eye shell just sits on top of it and doesn't move with the eyeball, it moves with the lids. This provides two things, one of which is shadowing information, just general light occlusion from the eyelids and the geometry around the eye. We've also have it hooked up to do blurring around the perimeter of the eye to integrate the eyeball better with the flesh around the eye. There is an additional piece of geometry at the tear duct to blend between the eyeball and the tear duct itself. This blends both the color and the normals to get a better integration there to kind of approximate that sort of connective tissue between the eyeball and the skin. So this is kind of showing all of the different components. Here's the full eye setup, and I'll just start removing piece by piece. This is it without the occlusion. This is it without the perimeter blurring. Here's without the tear line. Now without that tear duct blend. And finally without using the eye shading model. This is using the default shading model instead. And comparing that now with the full lighting setup, you can see just how much goes into it. Here's one other example. Here's the full setup. That's without occlusion. That's without the blur. Without the tear line. Without the tear duct blend. Without refraction, in this case, is turned off. And now without the eye shading model. And then back to the full setup. Some other kind of minor things that were in here. The eyelashes are using our new hair shading model. It's a really minor case, but that's what we used. Her actual hair doesn't use our hair shading model. It's not clean hair, it's really dirty, matted, kind of dreadlocks. We found we could get a reasonable look from just the regular shading model. But it's worth mentioning our hair shading because many characters will have clean, kind of normal-looking hair. This was added for our Paragon characters. We use a shading model that's an approximation of the same one used by Weta, that's a reference to that research paper. This approximates multiple different lighting scattering events within a hair strand and within the hair as a whole. It does both reflections off of the front of the strand, transmission directly through the strand, transmission through the front of the strand to reflect off the back, and then transmit back through the front again. Those will give you both a non-colored highlight and a colored highlight. And then finally, we've got a very rough approximation for multiple scattering, which is kind of approximating the amount of absorption throughout the light path as it goes through a whole mass of hair instead of just an individual strand. And as a whole, we get this sort of hair shading. For the geometry of hair, we used alpha masked cards instead of a bunch of individual hairs. We just don't have the geometry budget to be doing millions of hairs on a head as individual strands. These are opaque, which works well with our deferred shading architecture. It uses a feature in the engine called dither opacity mask, which is a form of temporal dithering. When combined with temporal AA, it gives us a cheap form of order-independent translucency. The fur on Senua was using a similar sort of approach with the dithered opacity mask. Instead of using the hair shading model, we used subsurface, which we could have made some modifications to hair, which we'll probably do in the future that would be a good fit for this, but we got some decent results just using the old subsurface model. Finally, the last thing is cloth shading, which was used a bit on Senua, but is used quite a bit more on our Paragon characters. This gives an ability to be able to put a fuzz layer on, which pretty closely mimics how cloth works. Pass it back over to Meme to close things out.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So the technology that was brought together for this demo, it's there to support really a creative intent, to make you feel like you've looked into the soul of a character that feels alive. And I think over the next few years it's going to become increasingly difficult for the layman to see the qualitative difference between pre-rendered CGI and real-time CGI. And this is especially true in VR, where we would expect humans, virtual humans, whether AI-driven or human control, perhaps human control with sparse data such as voice, to be as believable as they are in real time, in real life. So we've made some massive strides forward, and there's a long way to go still, but I've been really proud to be part of this kind of collaboration. So I'd like to thank everyone that's been involved. And just to end, it'd be good to show you the the offline version of the same trailer, but still running in real time. Do I?
You can't put it into words. A moment when you look into the eyes of the one who is supposed to reassure you, make you feel safe. It only takes an instant. Fear swallows you before you have a chance to make sense of it. And darkness becomes a part of who you are.
You killed him.
Her world changed that day.
when the Northmen took him from her. Senua knows that there is no going back to how things were, that there is nothing to go back to at all.
Their gods can see into your mind. They will use this power to destroy you.
They won't stop me. I can still feel it.
Whatever's left of him, they will never let him go.
I'm not gonna let him rot here.
You're the one rotting here.
Leave me alone.
You will die here.
No.
And all your suffering will have been for nothing.
Dillion? Is that you? I'll find you, man. I promise.